Soaring high above San Francisco Bay, the New Bay Bridge is one of the busiest bridges on the planet. But keeping all these drivers safe is a major challenge. A mega earthquake could strike any day.
The potential for an earthquake disaster is monumental.
The last big earthquake shattered the original bridge. Now an even bigger quake is due to hit.
We're 5 years overdue for a very large event, and it could happen any second.
Building a new bridge that could stand up to this cataclysmic force of nature seemed impossible.
Necessity is the mother of invention. The bridge design team was challenged to do something that no other bridge design team had ever been asked to do before.
We go inside the New Bay Bridge to reveal how engineers built it to be indestructible. Nature can unleash some of the most destructive forces on the planet. But around the world, engineers are fighting back, determined to build structures that can survive the worst, that are bigger, higher, and stronger than ever before. How do they do it? Discover the secrets behind engineering the impossible, building indestructible megastructures. San Francisco, California. Built on a narrow peninsula of land on the Pacific coast. San Francisco is surrounded by water. Giant bridges are the vital links that connect the city to millions of people on all sides of the bay. The Golden Gate Bridge is the most iconic of San Francisco's bridges and one of the most famous bridges in the world. But looks aren't everything. Six miles to the east, the Bay Bridge is the city's real workhorse. Spanning 4.5 miles of water between San Francisco and Oakland, the Bay Bridge is not just one bridge. It's two that meet on a rocky island in the middle of the bay. Over 100 million vehicles cross this bridge every year. And the new East Span is a marvel of engineering. A bridge that soars 525 feet above the bay and spans 2.2 miles of water. The widest bridge in the world, the longest single-towered suspension bridge ever built, and the only bridge to hang from one single cable. It's a critical lifeline for millions of people. Morning rush hour. A time of day when some 280,000 vehicles cross the Bay Bridge. Without it, San Francisco would grind to a halt. Yet it's one of the world's most vulnerable bridges, because it's built right on top of one of the deadliest geological features on the planet, the Pacific Ring of Fire. Fracturing our planet is a 25,000-mile fault line. Along this line, the vast moving plates of rock that make up the Earth's crust crash together, generating 90% of all the world's earthquakes. The state of California lies on a transform boundary, an area where two continental plates endlessly grind past each other. The movement causes massive tears in the Earth's crust called faults. In California, the two most dangerous are the San Andreas Fault to the west and the Hayward Fault to the east. Smack bang in the middle is the Bay Bridge. Either fault could unleash a major earthquake that could strike the bridge head-on. But it's not just a theory. In 1989, the 7 million people of San Francisco Bay learned just how vulnerable they were. It was just past 5 p.m. Suddenly, 60 miles to the south, the San Andreas Fault wrenched apart by 8 feet, releasing 20 times as much energy than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Seconds later, the shock waves reached San Francisco Bay.
Oh my God, we're having an earthquake. Wait a minute. Hold on.
Right off the bat, of all the earthquakes I've experienced in my life, this was the biggest.
The 6.9 magnitude quake shook the Bay Area for only 15 seconds. The toll, though, was devastating. $6 billion worth of damage, thousands injured, and 63 people dead. Homes sank into the ground. Roads crumpled. The east span of the Bay Bridge was torn apart.
Your westbound section has collapsed into the eastbound section.
A 250-ton, 50-foot section of the upper deck had collapsed. Bruce Stephen was crossing the bridge when the quake struck.
I was coming back over from Oakland. I was going up the ramp to get to the higher part of the bridge, and the car started to shake. And then there was the sensation of dropping. I thought the whole bridge was falling, and I screamed out, "We're gonna die," and I blacked out.
When Bruce came to, his car was hanging hundreds of feet above the water.
I was looking at the water. I had no idea why my car stopped. I had no idea why I wasn't in the water. My thought was to get out as fast as humanly possible. I didn't expect to come out of that car alive.
That day, only one person died on the bridge. But the collapse impacted the lives of millions of people as it severed the vital link between Oakland and San Francisco.
We had no ability to send resources to help out, and they were calling for resources that took away a lifeline to San Francisco. No one was going on bridges that day or even the next day.
Families were cut off from loved ones. 30 days for workers to repair the bridge. The disruption plunged the area's economy into freefall. It lost almost $3 billion in the subsequent 2 months. San Francisco could not afford for that to happen again. So, in 1997, city planners on both sides of the bay made a pledge. They promised to replace the old eastern span with something that could survive a megaquake. For the engineers, it seemed an impossible challenge. How could they construct the new bridge to be virtually indestructible?
The whole bridge is carried by this tower, and it's very important that this tower, after an earthquake, still can carry the load.
The new east span of the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge is one of the most seismically advanced bridges in the world. And it has to be. A megaquake could strike any day.
It's a huge challenge to build in earthquake country. There are surface waves that come across that actually make the ground roll like the ocean as well as shake side to side like this. And those are the waves that do the damage.
To build a new bridge that could survive these forces, engineers first had to understand what went wrong in 1989. Why did the original bridge fail so catastrophically in that last major quake? One of those investigating the problem was engineer Marwin Nader.
In 1989, when the earthquake occurred, about 60 miles south of here, the bridge got pulled to the east, and this panel in front of me right here fell onto the lower deck.
The shock waves beneath the roadway simply pulled the bridge apart.
During the earthquake, the ground was basically flexing the structure back and forth. The bridge wasn't designed to take those kind of movements.
In 1989, the old bridge stayed standing, but only just. Any day, the big one could strike. A possible magnitude 8 megaquake, over 40 times more powerful. One such megaquake hit San Francisco Bay in 1906. It killed thousands, left over 200,000 people homeless, and virtually flattened San Francisco. Engineers know that another quake of this intensity would destroy the original east span of the Bay Bridge.
If such an earthquake occurs, this bridge would sustain much larger damage and would probably collapse into the bay.
A radical new design was needed. And for inspiration, the engineers looked at the two bridges that had survived the 1989 quake intact, the Golden Gate Bridge and the west span of the Bay Bridge, and asked, why? The answer, both are suspension bridges. The roads hang from cables and can sway in a quake.
Think of a swing where you're sitting on the swing and the earthquake occurs. You will probably feel very little. That's exactly why the Golden Gate and the western spans did not fail.
Suspended from two towers, each locked into solid bedrock with massive foundations. Two giant cables carry the roadway that hangs beneath them. So when a quake hits, the roads sway like a swing. A new high-tech suspension bridge was the ideal solution for the East Bay. But when engineers looked at the geology below the water, they realized there was a problem. There was nothing to build on but soft mud, hundreds of feet deep.
Everything that's down here at this low level, from the Hayward Fault to the west, is soft material, what we call bay fill. If you take a look at this stuff, this is about the last thing you would want to build on.
Mud is dangerous because of how it behaves in a quake. When the Earth ruptures, the force sends shockwaves out through the Earth's crust. In solid bedrock, the waves are short and fast, but in mud, the shockwaves are amplified, making them much more destructive.
It's like a gel. You can see here, I'm kind of getting sinking into it. And this stuff is going to shake like crazy, right? It's going to be a very, very active area out here. And really, who knows what's going to happen?
Building a tower for a suspension bridge here on the eastern shore was not an option. But across the water, right in the middle of the bay, is a rocky island, a perfect place to build one tower. So could Marwin Nader's team dare the seemingly impossible and build a bridge suspended not from two towers, but just one? Getting that one tower right would be vital.
All the load is carried by this single tower, and it's very important that this tower, after an earthquake, still can carry the load.
First, concrete foundations driven 200 feet into solid bedrock would lock the tower into the ground. Then a roadway above would balance like a seesaw, with a giant cable holding the structure in place. The tower would not only have to carry the weight of the roadway and the cable, but the traffic too, 5 lanes on each side. Together, that's over 40,000 tons the tower has to hold up, the weight of a cargo ship. It's a daring design with many inherent risks. This tower needs more than just stable foundations if it's going to stand up to a mega quake, because the higher you go, the more quake tremors become amplified. How could engineers design the 50-story tower to survive?
There are 2 ways to resist the earthquake, either by resisting the forces or being able to flex with the earthquake. We have learned that it's much more important to be able to be flexible, to take the movements of the earthquake and to dance to the rhythm of the earthquake.
The first key to making the tower flexible was to construct it from a material that would bend, steel. The second was to build the tower out of 4 separate shafts that could move independently, absorbing the earthquake's energy.
Instead of the tower behaving like this, it starts behaving like this.
Although the 4 shafts are separate, in a quake they can still act as a single structure because of one innovation: shear link beams. Designed to bend and flex, they act like crumple zones, deforming so the tower won't collapse. Engineers decided that if anything on the tower was going to break, they wanted it to break here.
Very much like the fender on your car. When an accident occurs, the fender takes the bump. And when the bump occurs, the fender crumbles, but you're safe, The car is still drivable, and you can take it to the mechanic to fix it when the time is right. The shear links along the height do very much the same thing.
Just like car bumpers, the shear links can be replaced easily. Job done in just a few days.
It's a matter of going in, unbolting these bolts, taking that component out and replacing it with a new one. But the key is they don't have to be replaced for opening the bridge.
Normally used on buildings, this was the first time shear link beams had ever been tried on a bridge. 120 of them transformed the 4 shafts into a single tower 525 feet high. But building it requires precision engineering. Get it wrong, and the whole bridge could come crashing down.
I'm just hoping we're not wrong here. I'm hoping the engineers got it right.
San Francisco Bay's new bridge has a revolutionary design. Half elevated skyway, half suspension bridge. At the west end, over 2,000 feet of road, 10 lanes wide, hangs from just one shock-absorbing tower. And engineers had to build this tower like no other, because 2 of the most active earthquake faults in the US rip through the landscape on either side.
The probability of having a large earthquake occur in the Bay Area is 60% in the next 30 years.
Experts predict that the next big one will come from the fault closest to the new bridge, the Hayward Fault. Investigating just how dangerous this seismic hotspot is geologist Luther Strayer.
There are actually quite a few great places to see the active trace of the Hayward Fault in Hayward. This is the corner of Rose and Prospect, and you can see that the fault is marked by a series of systematic fractures that are telling us that this block over here is heading northward towards Alaska, while this block here appears to be staying stationary and pretty much attached to North America. The fault runs probably right under that fence and then over through this neighborhood here. This is a fundamentally huge fracture in the Earth's crust.
Over the years, the ground movement has become clearly visible.
What we're seeing down here is an offset of a curve that was poured in the 70s. And we see a significant amount of offset here, maybe about 8 or 10 inches. What we see here was not accomplished during a single earthquake, but by something that we call creep.
Creep happens when the plates grind past each other without causing earthquakes. Cracks in walls and curbs reveal that at the surface, the ground is constantly shearing. But deep below the surface, scientists know the plates are stuck together.
At depth, the problem is it's not slipping. All right? We call that a locked section of the fault.
It's a disaster waiting to happen. While the plates are locked, the geological forces behind them continue building towards breaking point.
What we're seeing here is that at the surface, it can easily move by each other because there's just no pressure on the rocks. But at depth, there's huge pressures against the surface of the fault. And you can just like with your hands, if you don't have much pressure, it's easy to slide. But if your hands are pushed together, it's very difficult to slip. And when it does it catastrophically.
It's this sudden slip that generates massive earthquakes. Bad news for the Bay's 7 million residents and the Bay Bridge. And geologists calculate a big one is long overdue.
Our records show that large earthquakes on the Hayward Fault occur about every 140 years. And right now we're at 145 years. So we're 5 years overdue for a very large event.
Building anything that can withstand this is a major challenge, let alone a seemingly fragile bridge tower.
When the big one occurs, this area will be devastated.
To combat the danger, engineers would take no chances. Each of the 4 shafts was made from 5 sections of steel, bolted one on top of the other. This section weighs over 1 million pounds, nearly as much as a fully loaded super jumbo jet. A strand jack winched the sections upright and hoisted them hundreds of feet into the air before lowering them into place. Thousands of bolt holes then had to line up exactly, so that one section could be locked tightly to the next. This is precision engineering with no room for error. The groundbreaking design of 4 independent legs and state-of-the-art shear link beams allows the central tower to sway by a massive 5 feet in a quake. To be quake-proof, though, it was not just about the tower. Everything about the new suspension span had to be engineered to be flexible, including the roadway. And this challenge would push the designers to the limit. Scientists predict that a mega quake could strike San Francisco at any moment. And when it does, the new east span of the Oakland Bay Bridge will need to stay standing. In 1989, the last quake tore the O Bridge apart. How could engineers stop the same thing happening to the road decks on the new bridge? First, the decks were constructed from steel that would bend without cracking. Built in 28 separate colossal sections, the engineers' first challenge was to lift the section into place, a mammoth task. These sections, each 5 lanes wide, top 1,000 tons apiece. Getting them hundreds of feet above the water took the biggest crane barge on the US West Coast. At nearly the size of a football field, it has a boom over 30 stories high. But it was more than just heavy lifting. Operators had to ensure that the sections lined up to within 1/10 of an inch, because the next step was to connect the sections together.
Well, we're inside the suspension bridge. There are many units of steel here, many pieces of steel, some of them the size of a building. And we need to connect those in such a way that they behave as one unit acting together. And the way we connect them, in many cases, with bolts.
Teams of steel workers used 4,500 threaded bolts to fasten each section to the next. Connecting them this securely means that in a quake, the steel road decks can act as one unit and flex without fear of failing. With the road deck now completed, engineers face their final challenge: to suspend the roadway from the tower.
The cable of this bridge is the next most important thing on the bridge. Obviously, the tower is carrying the whole bridge, but the cable needs to carry the load off the roadway to the tower.
Like the rest of the bridge, Nader's innovative design tore up the rule book. For the first time ever, instead of 2 cables, this suspension bridge would have only 1. Attached to the roadway itself, the cable stretches over the central tower, loops underneath 10 lanes of traffic, before returning to lock back into the roadway.
The cable is not anchored into the ground, it is self-anchored, meaning the cable is anchored into the roadway. This is a first of its kind.
Looping under the bridge means the single cable can hold up the road decks and pull the whole structure together, making it tighter and stronger. This nearly mile-long cable is made up of over 17,000 individual steel wires. Placed end-to-end, they would stretch more than halfway around the world. And all these wires have to be placed precisely or the cable could fail. Engineers designed robots to haul the strands of wire up and over the tower, beneath the roadway, and back again. A painstaking job that took over 4 months. Finally, the thousands of wires were compressed so that they would act as one super thick cable. Workers used 200 steel suspender ropes to link the cable to the road decks. last, the moment of truth. Would the tower and the single cable support the weight of the 35,000-ton roadway?
The moment that I was proudest of was when liftoff occurred, because from a structural perspective, that was the self-anchored suspension bridge being born. I mean, that was the moment.
Everything held just as predicted. The suspension bridge is perfectly balanced, supported firmly by the single central tower. The new bridge is a model of flexibility. A flexible tower, flexible road decks, and a 5,000-ton steel cable will allow the whole bridge to sway and bend in a quake without being torn apart.
During a large earthquake, the bridge is going to wobble and sway. It is going to move up and down. People are going to see a sense of a wave on the bridge.
Making the bridge sway and move is vital in an earthquake. But engineers also had to make sure that the bridge wouldn't flex too much. Because as well as quakes, this bridge faces another force of nature: wind.
History, physics, engineering has taught us in the past that wind in the environment, or at least in an environment like this, can be very damaging to a bridge.
Though built to withstand potential wind gusts of up to 144 miles per hour, sometimes more moderate winds of around 30 miles per hour can also pose a problem if they happen to hit the bridge side on.
When structures are shallow, like an airplane wing, they can start to move. As the wind blows around a structure, there's the potential for the wind, as it comes around a wing, to start to create vortexes. And they can start to vibrate the structure, moving it up and down.
In 1940, wind played havoc on the newly opened Tacoma Narrows Suspension Bridge in the state of Washington. As 40 miles per hour winds blew over it, the thin, flexible road decks started to twist and vibrate.
Have you ever been on an airplane, you looked out the window and you saw the airplane wing moving up and down? That might be fine for an airplane wing because it's designed for that. We don't want our bridge structures moving up and down, and if you will, maybe even getting to flutter. That can actually cause a collapse.
4 months after it opened, wind gusts tore the Tacoma Narrows Bridge apart. The disaster forced engineers to radically redesign suspension bridges to withstand the potentially devastating wind effect. And to counteract vibrations of up to 1.5 feet on the Bay Bridge, they came up with vortex plates.
These are plates that we've actually added to the bottom of this structure to manage the wind as it flows around the structure.
They may not look like much, but these diagonal rows of thin plates break up the wind vortices on the underside of the bridge.
What these plates do is they redirect the wind particles, and it protects the structure. We believe if we took them off here, the structure would start to vibrate and move too much to unacceptable levels. So these are absolutely critical for the safety of this structure.
These vortex plates allow the road deck of the suspension span to flex in a quake, but limit the flexing in side-on winds. The suspension bridge, however, only spans part of the bay. There was still another mile of water to cross, and engineers knew that this next section would have to be built on the most dangerous type of ground in a quake zone: mud.
It's an engineering nightmare to build in these conditions.
Connecting San Francisco Bay's new iconic suspension bridge to the Oakland shore is the Skyway, 2 elevated bridges that cross over a mile of water. Engineers wanted to build this part of the bridge in concrete, not steel. But in a quake zone, building concrete bridges can be a recipe for disaster, as the city of Oakland learned in the quake of 1989. A 1.25 mile section of 2-tier elevated freeway was destroyed.
There's a hell of an earthquake. 25238, we have a major injury accident, Cypress and West Grandview. They're advising major injuries.
The top deck collapsed onto the lower one. 42 motorists died. One of the first responders on the scene was Fire Chief Mark Hoffman.
Some people were trapped, some they were crushed, or parts of their bodies were crushed. We were on our hands and knees breathing smoke. The cars were on fire while we were in there. There was hazardous materials, there was everything.
We're going to need some trucks down here as soon as you can get them.
Every single section had people that were dead, people that needed help, people that were crying out for help. It went well beyond anything we'd experienced, probably like a war or something where you're losing friends. These were people from our community.
The freeway collapsed because it was built on mud. As quake tremors were amplified in the soft ground, the concrete columns above buckled and broke apart. The Skyway section of the New Bay Bridge is also designed in concrete and also built on the same soft mud that lies beneath the Oakland shore. How then could engineers prevent the same catastrophe from happening here? Tasked with finding the solution was engineer Saeed Abbas.
During an earthquake, this mud shakes like a bowl of jello, and that is bad news for any bridge designer. A lot of money has to go into building strong, robust foundations. The ideal foundation for this bridge would be to take the piles all the way down to bedrock.
But in this part of the bay, bedrock is inaccessible, buried beneath 300 feet of soft mud. With such unstable ground, how could Abbas make the foundations rock solid? The solution? Steel tubes called piles driven into the bay floor, not straight down, but at an angle. Penetrating the top layers of soft mud, they reach down to firmer mud 300 feet below. A steel and concrete cap at the top locks the piles together.
Angled piles like this, they bring a lot of stability to the structure. Each pile cap is supported by 6 of these enormous piles. In your mind's eye, you can imagine as if there's a double tripod supporting each of these pile caps.
This technology was first developed for oil rigs, structures that have to withstand giant waves and powerful winds, and yet have nothing more than soft sand and mud to lock into. But nothing of this scale had ever been attempted before with a bridge. Each pile is 8 feet wide, 300 feet long, and weighs 220 tons. Pounding them into the mud took one of the largest hydraulic hammers in the world.
They used to call it the hand of God, that hammer, and it did a fabulous job.
Each blow delivers 1.2 million pounds of force. That's like driving a racing car into it at nearly 300 miles per hour. In total, the hand of God hammered 160 piles at absolutely precise angles to create solid foundations that would withstand the violent shaking of an earthquake. But even with foundations this stable, engineers couldn't stop the bridge completely from shaking in a megaquake. And the higher up you go on the bridge, the more violent the shake.
During a seismic event, the bridge structure is if you can imagine, it's like a big lollipop. As the ground shakes at the base over here, the top shakes quite a bit more over there. The pile cap can move back and forth about a foot. And then at the deck level, this motion is amplified to about 3 to 4 feet.
It was stretching like this that ripped the old Bay Bridge apart and caused its collapse. So how could engineers do the unthinkable and build a road out of stiff concrete but still capable of stretching? The solution was embedded inside the roadway itself and was another engineering first. Brian Maroney is inspecting the innovative technology. Giant shock absorbers called hinge pipe beams.
We're inside the Skyway portion of the Bay Bridge. Up above us is the roadway. That's where the traffic actually drives. Down below, that's the soffit. And you can see the San Francisco Bay down below, some 100 feet below us. This is where 2 sections of the bridge come together. What you're looking at here are hinge pipe beams. First time they've ever been designed or used on a bridge. They're here specifically for earthquake reasons. This hinge pipe beam is designed to allow the bridge to expand and contract.
60-foot-long steel tubes move back and forth like a piston, allowing the road decks to pull apart. And once again, the engineers specifically designed the bridge to fail where they wanted it to.
These hinged pipe beams are designed to be what we call structural fuses. In the event of an earthquake that's very, very large, we've decided as bridge designers to make sure this is the place where it gives a little bit. This portion of the hinge pipe beam is a little bit larger. It's a little bit stronger. This section from here, where I'm putting my hand, to here, where I'm putting my hand, it's a little bit smaller in geometry, a little bit thinner. The material is also just a little bit weaker, if you will.
So if the worst happened, this is a section that would fail and could be replaced.
We could actually take this out and replace it and still keep traffic on the bridge. It wouldn't be easy, but we could do it.
20 hinge pipe beams at key intersections allow the road decks to pull apart by up to 6 feet in a major quake, making this concrete bridge able to stretch far more than the old steel bridge. So even in the face of the big one, the Bay Bridge will keep people safe and keep traffic moving.
The idea is we're never going to have to take this bridge down after an earthquake. We're going to actually be able to put this thing back into operation pretty quickly.
Built to last for at least 150 years and to withstand a 1 in 1,500 years quake, the future of this bridge in this quake zone looks assured. But there are other parts of the world where quakes are even bigger. Is it possible to design bridges that could withstand the very worst that nature can unleash? The new east span of the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge was opened on Labor Day weekend, September 2013. 11 years in the making and built between the most active earthquake faults in America. It is the most expensive bridge built to date, clocking in at an estimated $6.4 billion. At the time of opening, workers were still below the bridge, racing to complete parts of the structure. But even unfinished, the new bridge was far safer than the one it replaced. It was engineered to combat the extreme quake forces that could devastate the entire Bay Area.
The potential for an earthquake disaster is monumental. The devastation will be unfathomable.
But this area here is going to get tossed. It's going to be a really significant shake. The Hayward Faults earthquake that's coming is going to be a big one.
Roads will fail, bridges will fail, high-rise buildings that aren't built to earthquake standards to move with the earth are going to have dramatic failures.
It's going to be right here in our neighborhood. There's a lot of people that live literally right on the fault. It's going to be a really bad day.
But when the big one does strike, locals can take heart that the new Bay Bridge is engineered to stay standing. Cutting-edge seismic features will keep its foundations locked solid and allow its road decks above to roll with the punches.
Oh, I definitely feel safer crossing the new bridge. It's state-of-the-art. It's the best you can put out there.
Quite frankly, if an earthquake does occur, probably the safest place to be on the bridge or on the Bay Area would be at the top of this tower. It'll be quite a ride, but it would be the safest place to be.
No one can yet predict exactly when the megaquake will occur. But when it does come, the bridge is designed to remain open, allowing emergency vehicles to cross safely and to bring help to disaster zones.
This roadway is going to be far more survivable. You take away the collapse factor, and that's huge.
But what if an even stronger quake were to hit? Scientists calculate that's not possible in California, but cities further north are at risk. Portland, Oregon and Seattle, Washington face a quake over 1,000 times stronger than the quake that struck San Francisco in 1989.
The most powerful quake that could hit the U.S. now would probably be anything in the range of high 8s or a 9. It'd be devastating.
Nature has already shown it can pack a punch this big in other parts of the world. Japan 2011, magnitude 9. Chile 2010, magnitude 8.8. Indonesia 2004, magnitude 9. No bridge on Earth is currently engineered to survive such megaquakes. So what does the future hold? Can we ever protect ourselves and our bridges against such cataclysmic events? Engineers and scientists are already working on the next generation of quake-proof bridge technology. Instead of steel that will buckle on a quake, industries are now creating memory materials, super flexible alloys that will return to their original shape. In place of standard concrete, engineers are testing new, advanced mixtures that won't crack or crumble under stress. And to replace cables made of steel wire, scientists are looking at nanotechnology to create cables that are far lighter but stronger. They could allow bridges to span ever greater distances, even oceans and seas, without fear of collapse. And in the future, the new east span of the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge will be seen as a pioneer, an engineering marvel that showed how bridges could be indestructible megastructures.